Fever 1793. Today I'm reading chapter 21. September 27th, 1793. At other places we found a parent dead, and none but little innocent babes to be seen, whose ignorance led them to think their parent was asleep. Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, a narrative of the proceedings of the black people during the late awful calamity in Philadelphia in the year 1793. Her mother was dead, broken in the eyes of tiny Nell. Her name was the last bit of information I could get from her. Seeing her mother's body, quite clearly a victim of yellow fever, on the bed seemed to make her mute. She stood before me, and before I realized what I had done, I picked her up and cradled her close. Now what? I couldn't care for Nell. I could barely care for myself, and her mother needed burying, though I didn't relish another trip back to the public square. I had to find someone to care for her. None of the neighbors who answered their doors knew anything about the family, and they all had enough problems of their own without taking in the child. You might try Reverend Allen's group, offered one woman. I seen two women carrying a basket down the alley not long ago. They'll know what to do with the child, and they'll send one to care for the mother. Where do I find them? I asked. If you can't find any of their members hereabout, go down 5th Street, south of Walnut. They hold meetings there where they're building a church. You will find someone there to help, I'll wager. 5th Street, south of Walnut. So many blocks to walk, and I'd have to do it with Nell on my hip. But it would be further to carry her to the orphan house, and further still to the coffee house. Nell looked at me. There was no choice. I hoisted her high in my arms and started south. I kept my eyes open for anyone who might help, but the only folks in the street were sailors, and most of them were drunk. I was nearing the dockside taverns. I held Nell close and tried to walk faster. I did not want to delay in this part of town. Two black women ahead of me caught the attention of a rowdy group hanging outside a tavern door. They moved swiftly, ignoring the taunts and vicious words the men called after them. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes. There was something about the straight line of the taller woman's back, the color of the cap, and her dark head. Eliza? I whispered. I blinked again. The sunlight on the water had left spots dancing in front of my eyes. The women walked steadily away from me, each holding a large blanket over their arms. Eliza? They turned into an alleyway and disappeared. Eliza! I screamed. My feet found their strength, and I took off at a run, Nell bouncing painfully and gripping my shift for her life. Eliza! A filthy man from the group in front of the tavern broke off from his friends and chased after me. Hello, love, he slurred. His breath carried the stench of dockside garbage, whiskey and filth, hardtack and disease. Come dance with me. He tried to pluck Nell from my arms. Come dance, he insisted. Nell wound her legs tightly around my waist and bit the man's hand. He howled with outrage while his companions collapsed in laughter. I held tightly to Nell and sprinted for the alley, afraid to look over my shoulder. Glad you're on my side, I told Nell. She stuck her thumb back in her mouth as if nothing had happened. The women were gone. I walked down the alley to a courtyard. It should have been crowded with playing children, chickens, and pigs, but was quiet save for the noises made by a tired woman hanging out laundry. I checked behind me. The drunk had found other sport and had not followed us. Nell was grower heavier by the minute. I carried her over to the woman hanging out her wash. Please, excuse me, ma'am. Have you seen two women with baskets walk by here? I seen nobody, the woman answered. Do you have the fever? No, I'm well. You don't look well, the woman said. You look like a wraith. The women, did you see them? They must have passed by. It is most important that I find them. Try the Simon house. I heard the door close that way a moment ago. Which one is the Simon house? The woman pointed at a house that fronted onto the courtyard, then drew a stained coverlet from the tub at her feet. I paused in front of the yellow rag tacked to the door. Should I bring Nell in a house with fever victims? She blinked sea-green eyes at me. What a foolish question. This child has lived in a fever house for days, weeks maybe. I opened the door and rushed in. The parlor stood ready for company, with surprisingly fine furniture for the neighborhood and a portrait on the wall. Thick dust coated the chairs and table, and a man's coat lay on the floor. I stood unsure of what to do next when I heard the murmur of voices and footsteps overhead. I gathered up my skirts and went up. Eliza? A young man leaned over his wife, fanning his face. Try that again. Fanning her face with a paper fan. Two silent children sat on the floor, gnawing hard rolls. Are you come from the apothecary? The man asked in a rasping voice. I shook my head. They promised to send Peruvian bark. It may save her yet. He shifted the fan to his other hand. Why then have you come? I'm looking for Eliza. I was told she was here. We have no Eliza here, he answered. I looked at the children again. Did two women just come to deliver those rolls? The man nodded. Saints, angels, they're from the Free African Society. God bless them. If one is the Eliza you seek, you might find her yet. They had several other homes to visit. I ran back to the street. Where could she be? I couldn't try each door to go into every house. What if she had left one house and as I entered another? There was only one solution. I sat down on the ground and cupped my hands around my mouth. Eliza! I waited until the echo faded among the sounds of the seagulls high overhead and tried again. Eliza! Who calls there? The faint voice came from an open window. Eliza, it's me, Maddie. I scanned the windows around the courtyard, but could not find the face I was looking for. A door closed. There! Eliza had just reached the bottom step when I slammed into her. She wrapped her arms around me. Maddie, 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 she cooed. What on earth are you doing here? And where did you find that baby girl?